All right, boys, we're up. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome to the latest episode of Taking America Camping, brought to you by TNS RV and Sport down in the great state of Texas. I'm Tim Meadows, joined as always by my business partner, Tex Maxon, and a special guest today, Adam Pursehouse, longtime friend of TNS. Yeah, Adam is the regional sales manager, and you're gonna have to give me a full title, Adam, because I can't keep up with your promotions.
I keep it simple. Regional sales manager for Georgetown and FR3 now.
Right, awesome. So that's in Forest River in their motorized division. So yeah. Adam's got Class A gas buses with the Georgetown products and all the subsequent lines inside of Georgetown and then FR3. Yep. So well represented on the lots here at TNS. A newer venture for us. And our history with Adam has helped bring that to bear. So I think we'll just dive right into that, man. Let's talk about your history inside the industry, how you got started, and how it has brought you to where you find yourself now, there at Forest River.
Yeah. Well, I heard you guys, I watched one of your previous episodes bring up AJ Jones. So I started my best friend is cousins with AJ and John. So okay. AJ and John were in the business. They, AJ and I were talking about me coming over to RVs even back to 2008, which would have been a terrible time to come over to RVs. So I'm glad I didn't do that back then. But
well, if you can make it in that, you can make it in anything.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I guess, right. But I randomly ran into him. I had just sold a business that I had, and like a week later, I was interviewing at Heartland RV. John and AJ were, both employed there. John had just switched over to running Cruiser, and AJ was still like a super GM at Heartland, and basically came in. I started out as a coordinator, even though I had previous sales experience. But I think that's a really good thing about the RV business is the coordinator program. You bring a guy in, you have him go on the road with the vets, you have him work shows, you have him. That way he's not just jumping into something that he doesn't know anything about, because we are a very unique business, the way we do business. But came in, I did that for, 3 or 4 months, and worked my first open house. And the first brand that I actually kind of was, helping out with was the Terry Classic, which I loved. It was that old school trailer that we did with the big windshield on the front. We only built 600 and some of them. Yeah. They're still selling today, used, what we sold them as brand new. So they're still holding value. And then Heartland had bought a production facility out west in Boise, Idaho, Nampa, the same, just a town outside of it. And they needed somebody to build the brand for Sundance. They were going to start selling Sundance out west even more, And so basically that was my first gig. I was selling Sundance, travel trailers and fifth wheels. And we had a product called Gateway back then, a fifth wheel, and then that Terry Classic. So right out of the gate, I had like half the country, and my job was it was sign business, right? Go sign business. And then did that for a while. And then I moved over to the Southeast for Cyclone, and then did Cyclone and Torque in the Southeast for a while. And then within Heartland, I took over the Prowler, Midwest and Southeast, and then eventually became the product manager for North Trail and Prowler. And then I had worked shows with my current boss, Jay Cavett, and I've always heard great things about Forest River Motorized. And one of the guys that I used to work with at Heartland out of Tampa, the Tampa Super Show at the airport, I ran into him, just was bull crapping with the guy. And he had told me about an opportunity over here, and I jumped on it. Nice. Basically harassed the guys, and Jay remembered me from being on the road with him and interviewed with him. And it's such a great division over here, and I feel really lucky, to be over here. And there's a lot of. It was kind of funny. We had a meeting, and we kind of restructured territories a little bit, and they had said it's good to have a young guy over on the West Coast again. And I'm 45, so
yeah, I was about that. Who's that?
Yeah, and I started laughing, and it just kind of gives you. you know, I'm around a lot of guys that have probably forgotten more about the RV business than I've learned so far. You know, I've been around for about a decade now, and
Sure.
So it was just a great place for me to go to learn more. And they do business differently over at Forest River versus a Thor company.
Right.
Nothing good or bad. I'm not going to get into that, but
just different, man.
It's
That's the beauty of the whole thing.
Yeah. And, it's great to learn another segment. You know, I mean, I've done travel trailers. I did stick and tin up to the, higher end. And I did, the half-ton towable fifth wheels up to the luxury toy haulers. So it's just nice to kind of get in the other segment, into a motorized segment. And then, I feel lucky I jumped right into the, to the number one brand in the industry, one of the biggest names in the business. So, so that's pretty much.
I think that's an interesting area as well. I mean, if you get into some of the, the model specifics with the with the product that you're carrying now, as far as your top floor plans, and because I'm sure coming out of the towable side, getting into the motorized side, and now you're adjusting to a whole different volume process, customer base. None these guys, the stick and tins, you're into a lot of your first time RVers and that kind of thing. Well, now you're talking to people on a daily basis who know the product as well as we do, because they've done their homework so heavily. Right. Yeah.
Different buyers. Buyers.
Yeah. So I'm sure that's been an interesting transition for you, and fun. I mean, those buyers are fun because they know what they're doing and looking for,
It's the biggest thing is they're very detailed about their questions. So that was very intimidating when I first took over, because, I had done travel trailers for so long that, it was very rare that anybody said anything that I didn't have an answer for. And then when I first started working shows over here with the motorized, I'd get like, uh-oh.
Yeah, sure.
And I've always had my entire sales career, I think there's probably a good mentor that I had along the way that told me, don't ever lie your way and, to answer a question. People will respect you way more if you just say, I don't know, I will find out. And I was able to lean really heavily on my teammates. These guys have been doing this again for a very long time. So, I'd just pick up the phone or text them and I'd have that answer. By the time I was, if I started in the living room and they got a question, by the time I hit the bedroom with that customer, I had the answer already. So, but yeah, it's a much different, it's a much slower process than a travel trailer. And that buyer, like you said, is very well. I mean, so typically by the time they get to us, they've had a travel trailer. They had, and then, it was just them, it was a young couple, and it was just the wife and the husband. And now they had some kids. So they went from a couple's coach, like a rear bath or like a rear living, and now they're buying their first bunkhouse. And then they go to a fifth wheel because they have more kids and they want more room, or they're taking longer trips. And then by the time we get them, they're typically on their third or fourth RV. That's my opener when I'm at an RV show and I'm talking to somebody is, what number is this? Like, so they know about, the construction. They're asking questions about the, what kind of walls do you have? What kind of roof do you have? What kind of appliances do you have? What kind of furniture do you have? They're asking all those questions because it's a much more in-depth process. They've lived through other trailers and the problems that maybe happened with those. What slide systems do you have? So a lot of the times stuff like that comes up. So your knowledge base has to be much more in-depth. So it was a lot of product learning, a lot of, watching videos, watching dealer videos and hearing what the dealers, that helped more than anything. And on our side, we can get muddied down and talking about construction because that's where we live. We live in, we're in the plants, we're in the product. And then what really helped me is starting to watch dealer videos because you guys are on the sales side, right? So
the use, the end use side.
Yeah, right. And what are the people asking you guys compared to what they ask us? And you can find yourself as a rep sometimes working an RV show or training on a dealer lot, and you're very technical. We have a 2-inch wall, we have a 30-inch entry door, we have, a one-piece fiberglass roof, and this slide works this way, and this is why it's better than that slide system. And even when you're training, sometimes you can lose the salespeople just because they're like, "Hey, man, like nobody ever asked me how thick your wall is." But they do ask about your furniture. Or they do ask about the Firefly system in the Georgetown, and And then, so you kind of tweak your training. So my first trainings, you know, in the field as as an RV rep are probably terrible. I mean, you know, but, you know, after a while you start learning, you know.
Well,
I think it's interesting too that your involvement in the unit before it leaves.
Yeah.
You know, before it goes to the dealer.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I think that you'd mentioned that a couple of times. I'd call you and you were out checking some units out and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that's you guys really get in depth with these units before they leave the factory, let's say. That you go through your process with that a little bit, because I know you guys really get in depth with all that.
Yeah. So so travel trailers, you know, they can build a lot of those in a day. On a motorhome, it's a much more slow process. But by the time it gets to the end, so like every day, like this morning, I had 3 emails come in. These are the bins to walk this morning. So before we ship any unit, a sales guy has to do a full walk on it. So it's already made it through quality control and all the processes that we do in house. And even that's even more than any manufacturer that I had, or line or plant that I had been a part of. So I'll just kind of give you guys the whole detail. I don't think I'd say anything out of bounds here, but we brought in this tablet system and for quality control. So essentially, every station has a checklist, and then every team leader has to go through that with that team, and everything has to go through a process. And by the time I get it, I got to go, kind of scroll all the way down on the screen to get to where it says sales walk. Mm-hmm. But as that unit is going down the line, there's a checklist. So, maybe you have a newer guy, or maybe a guy's sick that day, and, that he's the one that does this job and somebody else is filling in for him. So it's a much more structured process now. Yeah, and
I mean, we talk about process all the time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, the whole entire
in the store.
Yeah, the whole entire RV business is, I really like documentaries. I like, watching stuff about history, and, you go back to, Henry Ford and how he revolutionized American manufacturing. Well, it was the same guy does the same thing every single day. Mm-hmm. And that's his part. Right. Mm-hmm. Instead of having, like a handyman, it's just like if you're going to have your house remodeled, right? Oh, sure. You're not going to, it's nice to have a general handyman. Sure. But if I'm going to get a new toilet or a plumbing problem changed, or, I want a plumber. Right. It's nice to have a guy who, knows a little about a lot, but I want the guy that knows a lot about a little. Mm-hmm. Right. And the same process is happening on the RV line. So as that's going down the line and it's going through all those checkpoints, by the time that I get to it, I'm really just being picky, like, did they not wipe the putty really well there? Or did they not line that trim piece up well? Or, I run the slides in and out, I turn the ACs on, I turn the heat pump on, I'm, opening the microwave, I'm opening the, to make sure everything's good. I open every single door in the entire unit to make sure it's lined up. I pull every drawer out, and then we have soft close drawers. So I kind of push it in there, do it itself to make sure those are working correctly. I do the leveling system. I just go through every little piece. And even before that we see it, it goes through a rain bay, which, if you guys have never, I'm sure you guys have seen them, but, for the retail customer, might be watching this, that's incredible. I mean, it's like, it goes into like a monsoon, like a hurricane, and they do it with the slides in and the slides out. And, it just dumps water on this RV. So then, when I'm running the slides in and slide out, I want to make sure the seals are good. So is there any water in there when after it comes out of this rain bay? Is there, anything like that I might find? It gets taped. I look at the floor. I look at the roof, make sure there's no cuts. We have soft close or soft touch ceilings and the Georgetown and the FR3 and some of the segments, and making sure there's no cuts up there, looking at the floor, make sure there's no cuts there. Just really picky stuff that you want to make sure by the time it goes to your dealer that it's good. And, like now I'm on the road, so my teammates are doing it, but there's I want them to be successful. They want me to be successful. Right. So even if I'm not there walking a unit that's going to one of my dealers, I know it's going to be good. Mm-hmm. It's just kind of making sure that when it gets to the dealership, it's great, because not every dealer is, and I'm not putting dealers down, it's just a different way of doing business. Like you guys have a PDI process when it shows up. You do a full walk, you do everything, and then you clean it and you do everything else. Not all dealers do that. So, some dealers are more volume based or something along those lines, and that thing will show up. They check it, make sure it's good. They put it on a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So it has to be good, because if it's not, then you won't be successful. So
Sure.
regardless of what you're getting into with any dealer, if it shows up and it's great, and the styrofoam or any sawdust is blown out of the ceiling, and the little things that happen along the way, that just happen just from building a unit. The more you can do to get it here and be perfect, the better. All around, right?
That's good. I mean, because we know, from our standpoint where we're located, a new unit has traversed roughly 1,150 miles from the factory when it shows up here. And, in this case, they're driving it down the road, brother.
Yeah.
So, you're going to get a little bit of shakeout. You're going to get a little bit of that settling and things. So, I mean, we don't expect perfection. You've heard me say it for years, like the next perfect RV will be the first. I mean, we can have some really, really good ones. And we're striving for perfection. But we don't take it for granted that it shows up and it's 100% ready. We're not going to just slap a customer in and say, "Hey man, go get them, Tiger." Yeah. We're going to do our trust, but we're going to verify, we're going to make sure that thing runs through, and all those things are verified, on our side. Hey, I want to double back into something quickly. You mentioned like, your typical buyer in your segment has gone through a bit of an evolution. I think that there's an interesting juxtaposition between the evolution of the buyer and the evolution of you in your career and how you've moved through these different segments. And what I know of you, which I know a lot, we're pretty tight here. We talk quite a bit, and have for years at this point. What I admire about you and the way you do your job is you are extremely analytical. Yeah. You are maybe the guy who sets the bar in terms of the people that I know in the industry or that I deal with any regularity, that like, man, you are going to dig into the numbers and you're going to find the trends. You're going to find the things that are seeming to be, drivers in the market. And I think that where you've landed seems to be a really good fit for you, right? You've got the product and the infrastructure inside of which you're operating now, and you've got the team surrounding you that, like you mentioned, you're working with guys that are forgotten more than you ever knew. Well, like what I've always known of you is you're a very sharp guy who is always well versed.
Thank you.
And I like watching you work in a show type setting or directly with a customer, because I did pick up really early on that, like, if you don't know, there's no line of BS coming out of Adam Pursehouse. Like, hey, I don't know, but stand tight, because what I lack in knowledge here, I more than make up for in resourcefulness, and I know where to go get you that answer. It's something that I admire personally, and that we strive to be, kind of providing that same type of thing here. Like, man, if we don't know, we're going to learn, and we're going to learn fast, and we're going to get that answer for you. So like I said, I think it's just an interesting comparison when you talked about evolution. Tex, you may remember this. I mean, like when we first were breaking in with Cyclone and Torque, and we had Tim Victory for a short period of time, and then Chris Surge. Adam and I were going through this yesterday, just sitting here in the office, just kind of rehashing old memories. And Adam, I never knew him as Adam Pursehouse. I just knew him as Adam out east on that Cyclone team. Right. But so it's kind of like a mystery man. Yeah. And then as things evolved and you took over on that Prowler and North Trail side, that's when we really got deep into it. Yeah. It really worked to expand our relationship with those products and our market shares. So this is cool because, like I said, these are when we have this type of guy on, Tex, I mean, like, we could sit here and just talk for hours just about some of those shared memories and those things that we've been through together, experiences in the ups in the markets and the downs in the market. So kind of along those lines, Adam, there's all kinds of stuff that people are talking about as far as markets and what's trending and what's happening and what's gonna happen. Right. I think I put in my notes, the term interesting times.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, it's interesting, which is a cheap way of saying, and there's a whole lot going on, and nobody just has their. Yeah, I haven't found anybody that feels like they're completely dialed into exactly where any of it's going. But I wanted to get your take on, kind of the markets as they have been evolving here over the last, call it 2 to 3 years, and then looking at a shorter window of time, say the last 6 months, and then what's some of your kind of what you feel like you see things shaping up to do here in the near future.
I think we have a good year ahead. Show season was excellent. I had a very good show season. So did my teammates. We broke a record at the Tampa Super Show, which is the biggest. We did very well in September before our expo for, with all the dealers. We did, at the Hershey, Pennsylvania show, another massive show. There used to be 3 big shows, Hershey, Tampa, and then there was Pomona out west. They don't do Pomona anymore, but there is a collection of dealers that have what they call the Miracle Mile Show. And we killed it out there. It was a great show. And these are done on the lot. This isn't even like a centralized dealer show like a Tampa or a Hershey. This is 3 dealers that are kind of on the same area,
sure.
On the highway. And we were busy like during the whole show. In the weather out in California, Southern California, I thought it was going to be dead. It was like 40 degrees and raining in Southern California. So it might as well be a blizzard compared to like, Indiana or something,
right.
So, and we ended up being busy and we sold a bunch of stuff. So I had a very, very good show season. Personally, my teammates did as well. Like I said, we broke a record at the Tampa Super Show. So that anytime I see that usually is a pretty good identifier that things are going to be better. Right.
Sure.
When I first came over here, because I am very analytical, I really like looking at data. I like to figure stuff out. This goes back to, I used to have to do what we called solution sells. And it's basically, you can't go into somebody and just be like, what everybody thinks of salespeople are, like that you're just trying to push them in a certain direction to go buy something. You had to go in and actually create a case of like, I'm going to save you money if you do this, and this, and you'd have to go in and research how they were conducting business. You had to do all this stuff for them. And then you'd go in, you'd have a folder this big, just going through a presentation of how to sell them. And really all it was I was trying to sell them a copy machine or a printer or something like that, or software for the computers to read the documents as they scanned them, and you'd have to go through this whole process. So that was one of the foundations I had in sales. So, the reason I get so much into the data isn't just because of me, it's because it helps the dealer. Mm-hmm. Like if I can show you what zip code is the best zip code for you to spend your advertising dollars, that's going to help you. Right. And maybe it's not just for even my product, I'll help you with towables. I'll help you with anything, because the more I can make myself an advisor rather than a salesperson to you, mm-hmm. the better I'm going to do on your lot. Overall, right? So I took, like, when I first came over here, I went 20 years. I went and asked for 20 years worth of data. Unfortunately, I lost my main guy at the company that does all the data for the RV business, statistical surveys. He left. I think he's running something else now. So I lost my main contact, but I was able to get it in-house from upper management, and went back 20 years, and then I started pumping in all the data I could. I did gas prices. I did consumer price index. I did interest rates. I did, you name it, consumer debt, credit card debt, auto loan debt. And I just kept pumping all this data in there, trying to match it up to see, okay, if credit card debt's this high, because a lot of people buy on payments, right? So if credit cards are this high, the debt on credit cards is this high, does it have any kind of effect on RVs? And then I'm right now I'm trying to work on fifth wheels. Like I said before, with Motorized, is there, if we have a huge bumper year of fifth wheel sales, and fifth wheels have been doing great. I think you guys probably are seeing an uptick on those too. Mm-hmm. But at least it shows this year they were doing great. So, say this year is a fifth wheel bumper year, is there a 2 or 3 year, lull that where those people trade in and now they're buying a motorhome? And it just, that way you can I can go to a dealer and I can say, hey, this is going to be a great time for us to actually increase your inventory, and I have a case behind it, rather than just going, hey, you want to buy a couple extra units from me this month? Like I actually go to you and say, look, you are going to need these units in this time frame, and if you don't, we're going to miss sales because you won't have it, and they're going to go to somebody down the road that does. So that's the current thing I've kind of been looking into. But really, we are, in the grand scheme of 20 years, we're in the the up cycle of RV sales for this year. Now, again, I only had 20 years of motors. I'm trying to get my hands on towables in there as well, but on the motor side, we are on the upswing. You can literally watch it go and go and go. And new car sales, the same thing. New car sales were pretty close. I think it's just, when the consumer feels confident in the economy, now that's where you were kind of saying, there's some turmoil going on right now because, we've got, a different president and he's doing different things, and good, bad, ugly, whatever. I mean, it's just the fact of it, regardless of how you feel about it. Now, how is that going to affect what I had seen, in that 20-year scope, right? Because this is a little different than what, probably happened in the last 20 years outside of the last time President Trump was president. So
that's the beauty of analytics is you can, the idea is to remove the emotional connection to any of these things and just drill into the numbers, right? Like eventually we talk every day here with our guys about, hey man, people can have emotional connections to you, to the store, to the process. We get to the bottom of the buyer's order, it's all about math, right? Yeah. So if the math doesn't math, then it doesn't really, some of those things are great. Yeah. They may help a little bit, but the math has to line up. Yeah. It's funny listening to you talk about this and all the different things you were doing, because it's probably a year ago, plus or minus a couple of months, when you came in and you sat here at my desk with me and you ran me through that deck of all that data, which was like drinking from a fire hose. For a guy that's not as data and analytically oriented, like I'm much more of a feel and people relationships. I really have to drill into the numbers and make sure I get my head going in the right direction to make much sense out of it all. But I just kind of remember thinking, like, man, what is going on in that brain of yours, brother? It's so different, such a different approach. But there's so much value in that, and I think that's the beauty of part of the recipe of how we all can become successful together, and working toward the creation of success for customers, because we need, those of us that are feel people and that are relationship builders, we need the input. It's why, Tex and I are Tex is so much better at math than me. The guy can work out every number related to every deal we've had in the last 10 years just based on memory. And I'm like, hold on, let me boot my computer up. Let's go to the records. But the difference of everybody bringing those different strengths to the table, I think, is part of what's so beautiful in the whole scheme of things.
One of my teammates back at the office, he'll, because sales guys have good days and bad days, right? Some days you come to work and you're, the song that makes you happy comes on the radio. You're driving in, the sunrise is beautiful, and then you get to work and you start, making phone calls, and it's just no, and it's like, man, what am I doing wrong? And he started saying, "You got a graph for this, Adam?" Like messing with me. And I said, "Yeah." I'll make him a graph, that shows like a upswing. I'm like, "This is your first part of your day."
I thought you'd never ask.
So yeah.
So Tex, we talked a little bit earlier, about obstacles to success, both from manufacturing standpoint, dealer standpoint, owner standpoint. Talk to us a little bit about one of the or some of the things that you feel like have happened that have been moving past, and how we've moved around some of those obstacles with Adam on board now with the motorized stuff, because these were the first Class A's that TNS has been involved with. Just give us a little bit of the background on how that came to be and what you're seeing from it.
Well, a lot of it's is always about good Lord's timing, but right. Because really until just recently, we didn't even have the option of carrying the brand. We couldn't get a hold of an FR3 or a Georgetown, and so and we were also waiting for the market opportunity to come around, because we wanted some of that we wanted that market to be there. If you don't have a retail buyer, it doesn't matter how good you are as a salesperson or a dealership, you just don't have anybody to sell to, so, and it's not that we were in the market where we had nobody to sell to, but there's always the ebbs and flows of any retail market. So, as that upside of this market that I think we're at the base of right now, if you could agree. Like you were talking about the upswing in 25, I think that, the first quarter of this year was expected to be a challenge because, you've got all of the newness that's happened overall, and that's another long list of things. But then we see the base of spring and summer, and then the uptick that begins to happen into a lot of retail markets at the moment, so we were really just kind of lying and waiting for that opportunity to come along, and then that market to come along behind it that would support the high-end products. So, and that's really where we are. So we're just excited to be part of it right now, and then, ride this wave that, should last now. Again, as you see the ebbs and flows, you've seen the downside for a period of time, and you guys went through the same struggles that everybody else did as a brand. We went through the same struggles that everybody else did as a dealer, through that excuse me, that 22 time period and so on. And so, I think here we go. We're all just kind of buckling up and getting ready for a consistent run now for a period. And, I don't know. I think the overall market is that everybody's excited. We are very busy at the moment. Our what we call our PDI lanes, which is our delivery lanes, they're stuffed to the gills. Yeah, exactly. Right. So these units are sitting here running and ready to go all over the country. So, and we've all, in the short time that we've carried your product, we've already seen repeat buyers. A guy that came in and bought a small one, and then he came back and bought a big one. And that was within a 6-month period of time, so we're already seeing return buyers. Your brand is so well known that there's so much social interaction and all of that. I think too, something that we should mention is your different owners club groups, because they're so active and do such a quality job just for the product. So they're to me, they're an entity of their own. Really,
a ton of resources available. From the ownership side.
They just love the brand.
Well, a lot of them live in them. I'm sure we. For the big shows, we'll actually have members of the owners group at the actual show talking to customers, and and I just kind of, sometimes you get a little dusty, being a sales guy, and you start to feel like you can, okay, these guys are just, we have different terms for retail customers, but like in an RV show, you call them tire kickers, right? Yeah, they're just there looking. They're not ready to buy. They're just thinking or whatever. And I for sure, man, I thought they were in one of my units, and I answered all their questions. I said, "Is there anything else you need from me?" And no, we're just going to kind of take a look. I said, "Okay." I said, "Well, I'll be right out here if you need me. Just if any more questions pop up." And I didn't think that I just thought, oh, they're just looking, looking around. And the owners walked in there from the owners group. They go in there and they come out and they go, "Hey, we need a sales guy. There's 2 couples in here that want to order one of these." And I'm like, "You got to be kidding me!" And I walk in. It wasn't people I was talking to, because I would have definitely known that they were going to buy. And I go in, it's them, and they're like, "Oh, we really like this one. Thanks for your help." And I'm like, "I didn't do anything." So
you got any hard questions?
Yeah, the owners group's great. We had kind of talked earlier this morning. One of the things that does really help us as a division, and I think the reason we are, the number one division, is a lot of the engagement that we do with the actual retail customer. Right. When a lot of the times when a customer takes a unit, I know you guys do a very good job at this, but a lot of the times when a customer takes a unit, it's very intimidating, right? Like, a travel trailer, you can figure that out in probably 15, 20 minutes for the most part. Motorhome, especially when it's got the, interactive apps on the phone and stuff like that, that could be very intimidating to a new buyer that, has never had one before, just parking it and opening the slides and doing all the other stuff and hooking, doing hookups and all the other things that go along with it. It's intimidating. And like you had said, the resources on that owners group, there's a video, or you can ask a question on there. Within minutes, you'll have an answer either from us.
Have more than one.
Yeah, because we monitor it back at the office, or like in a hotel. Like when I get back, I go on and look to see if there's something I can answer. But there's always engagement from people. So you're not just buying an RV when you buy a Georgetown or an F43. You're actually buying like a community, that's above and beyond, that'll, go out of their way to help you out. They reach out. They have owners rallies, that they do so they can meet people. And I love the one that we do in Elkhart, because there's a what do they call it? What everybody brings a dish. I can't think of
like
the name.
A potluck.
They'll do a potluck, and man, there's so much good food from people, because that's what they do. They're retired. They got all day to come up with good recipes. So, we eat really good when they're
Maxon's
all there.
Always down for a good meal.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So
buffet.
Yeah, but that, it just helps. It's one extra little step, beyond the dealer, and where the customer doesn't feel like, okay, now I bought it and I'm alone. Right. They still have a relationship with you guys, at the dealer level, and then they also have a relationship with customers that also have that that RV. But then when I first came on board over at this division, they were like, "Hey, we're going to post your number on our website for any customers," and I was like, "Uh-oh, like how many calls am I going to get?" But as far as I know, our Forest River Motorized, I think we're the only people in the industry that actually do that. So if you talk to me at a show and we don't, just in passing or whatever, and I forget to give you a card, or I'm out of cards or whatever, or even on the dealer level, you can go on our website and find my contact information and email me or call me and get a hold of me. So that there's a lot of visibility with us, and accountability.
Availability. Yeah.
A lot of availability and accountability. So, if I say something that's wrong, there is repercussions for that. You're going to be able to get it, to find me. You're going to be able to get back in touch with me. So,
and
that makes you operate.
If you can't find him, let me know, and I will help you, and we will put him in the stocks and whip him together.
Yeah.
I'll actively participate in flogging of Mr. Pursehouse.
I think this all worked out just perfect for us. I just took over Texas with this brand. Previous relationship with you guys, I knew you guys were a great dealer. I made the call to Tex, and I was expecting Tex to, well, let me think about it, and I'm on the phone with him, first phone call about it, and he goes, "Let's do it." And I was
send the paperwork.
Nice,
send it.
I think it's great. Sometimes, something bad, or a down year might feel terrible when you're in it. But you find out later that it actually was the best thing that could have possibly happened for you. And I think it gave us both time to adjust, the slowness of last year. It gave us both time to adjust your service center, your lot, your salespeople, to kind of slowly versus, versus landing product and just right out of the gate, you can't keep them on the lot. Your service center is now full of stuff that you haven't dealt with before, and
nobody knows what they're doing.
And nobody knows what they're doing, and the customers are mad at you. So I think everything always kind of works out the way it was supposed to in the end. And I think that this whole the relationship with us, get back on board with each other with another company, with a new company for me, a new division for you.
Sure,
I think
a whole new segment.
Yeah, I think it's all perfectly working out. Getting your service department ready, getting your salespeople ready, getting me more accustomed to, the slowness of a motor versus, on a travel trailer, you call to a dealer, you try to sell them 10, 20, 30 units, maybe even more. With these, it's, 3, 2,
Right.
sometimes, in the middle of the season, maybe 6. But that's typically the slower process. So I think it's all worked out just the way it was supposed to work out. And we've got a great year ahead of us.
Right. Good. Yeah. I mean, I think, it's always interesting looking backward, right? Because at this point we're just kind of remembering and evaluating. So even those things that felt wrong, the delays with the EOFs and the paper, the getting everything situated with the state, getting all the licenses in place, it all feels wrong in the moment. It's like, when is this ever going to happen? And sometimes we can't see until we've got the perspective of being in the moment now and just looking back at it and saying, well, if that hadn't happened, there was opening the door for a lot of things to go wonky on us.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. I think that a lot of this lined up right, in retrospect, and we feel like we're well positioned for closing out model year 2025 strong, and looking forward into 26 as we continue to see improvements in markets and hopefully in the financial world, right? The ability to get buyers across that threshold in a way that works for them. Give us a little bit, and this doesn't have to be much, but a little bit about from your perspective, like your side of the desk, and you have all these different dealer relationships. Talk to us a little bit about how much of a schism there is between, certain type of dealer over here and then certain type of dealer over here, and how you have to manage that to try to keep your brand being successful in these different environments.
So there's been a lot of consolidation in the RV business. COVID really pushed that even like on a supercharger level of acquisitions from larger conglomerate dealers
on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, it's
on the manufacturing side and on the dealer side.
Same there. Yeah, some of the other, some of the smaller manufacturers got purchased by some of the bigger ones. So it's just with a dealership like you, like I pick up the phone, I call Tex, I call Tim, I deal with you guys on inventory. It's more of a personal involvement. With some of the bigger dealers, these the larger groups, there's an inventory analyst. The owner's he's got 15, 20, 30 stores, 100 stores that they're overseeing. They're looking at everything from financials to acquisitions to taxes, and they just don't have time to talk with a peon in the industry like myself, like a guy that's just calling to sell you a couple units for this one store that's over here. So you're dealing with an inventory analyst who's very knowledgeable, that knows, I guess their ability to look at data is greater than because they have like say 100 dealers. They know like, okay, I need this color with this this configuration in this market this time of year, because they've got 100 different stores giving them data that's kind of coming back like there, which is why for a rep, I can access that same data, and it's important for me to do that for a company like TNS who has 3 stores, right? So you're getting the same amount of knowledge with 3 stores versus like a national conglomerate like a
big box,
big box
operation.
So but that's mostly that's the biggest is there's a more personal level with a family owned store like a TNS than there is with one of the big box stores. But you're still, at the end of the day, you're still kind of doing the same routine, right? you're making a case for yourself and your brand of why they need you or why they need this floor plan or what, this, that, and the other. But you're dealing with an inventory analyst or someone along those lines at one of those stores. And then versus, I come to you guys and say, hey, look, I'm doing really good with this one 100 miles away or, 200 miles away at this dealership, or this in the state of Texas, this interior, like what, perfect example. We have the Pearl interior for Georgetown, right. And towables, lighter interiors were almost a death nail, right? So I never, like a light gray might do you okay, but if you had like a white interior, it was like a death nail, man. You did not want that going to any dealer that you had. But again, it's a different buyer, right? So it's not a buyer that's going to have a bunch of little kids, throwing Kool-Aid around or whatever, saying, you know what I mean?
Markers.
So, but, I came to Texas, and one of the first things I did is I pulled every single thing that sold over the last year and looked at the turn rate. For anybody listening that doesn't know what that is, that's the time that we sell it to the dealer. He puts it on his lot. How fast does that take for him to sell it? And I looked, okay, well, these 31L5 Georgetown sold 65 days faster on average than these 31L5s. Okay, so let's look at why that is.
Where are the differences?
And then I start going into the options. That's the easiest one, right? Well, okay. Well, this one, if I build it with Pearl, it sells faster than this one. Sure. Or if I have a theater seat in this model versus a sleeper sofa, it sells faster. And you just kind of start going through there. But that's one of the biggest, I guess, aspects of that dealer relationship is really just going to boil down to the personal relationship you have with. Right.
Well, and we consider that with all things there are trade-offs, but the importance of that personal touch in the relationship for us at TNS, our relationship with you, is that we want to make sure that we're putting the customer in a position to feel as though we can help to translate that. Like we can make the customer and you on the manufacturing side more available to each other. Right. Yeah. And so for what we don't have internally in terms of crunching some of those numbers and looking at, having somebody strictly dedicated to, studying of certain aspects of inventory, we're hoping to more than make up with the ability to connect the customer on a personal level back to the OEM. Yeah. So, well, man, I could do this all day with you because we've talked a lot in the past that, you make me sound like one of the Keebler elves with your smooth radio style pipes that you've got there. So you sound really good on over the airwaves. So I could sit here and listen to you talk all day, but let's put a bow on this thing here. And I'm going to just open it up to you. Like, man, just give us something that we haven't talked about that we should be talking about or we should be thinking about as it relates to the motorized side of the industry, just from here going forward.
I think one of the biggest things that I've noticed, and you already have brought on other motorized brands, that wasn't just me. But one of the things that I've noticed is the motorized buyer only buys from motorized dealers. You cannot dabble in motorized and be successful.
Right. I agree.
I'm going through that with another dealer that I'm dealing with right now that, we're kind of dipping our toes in it and it's not working. And I started looking at other inventory levels in that market and who's number one. And it really is directly tied to, if you want to be a motorized dealer, you have to be a motorized dealer. You cannot just have 3 of one segment. You got to have B's, you got to have C's, you got to have A's. And I think that was very smart of you guys to not only just get on board with me, but to bring on other brands. I think you guys do a Forest River Class C. You've got another division, another manufacturer here as well. So that was smart of you. And I think as the state of Texas starts to identify you more as a motorhome dealer, the service is already here. The relationship portion of this business is already there. Your pricing's great. I think the only thing that is going to happen, and that's just going to happen in its natural course, is people are just going to start identifying you as, that's a guy I want to go to buy a motorhome or, a motorized unit. And as that grows, I think that segment of your business Like when I pull in here, I think, instead of seeing towables in a few motorized units, I think I'll see half of this is going to be motors and half of it's going to be towables. And I look forward to that day.
That's good. Yeah. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
So as we wrap this thing up, we just want to thank everybody, you first and foremost, Adam, for taking the time. I know this is a crazy busy time of year. You've been on the road for the last 3 or 4 months, basically every weekend working a show, anywhere from, one side of the country to the other. And so then as show season begins to wrap up, you're now starting to kind of hit your normal haunts and running the roads. I know you were in Dallas yesterday and you came to Navasota in the afternoon. You're in Bryan. You're going to be back here. You're going to Austin. Like you're all over the place. So we appreciate you taking the time, not only to come see us, but to sit down to do this, to try to help get some of this information out to the buyers that are out there. And we want to thank everybody who's tuned in. Continue to ask to continue to try to help us get this message out a little bit more. So if you're hearing this, whether you found it on Spotify or YouTube or Facebook or, any of those places, we ask that you would do everything that you can do in your power, like it, share it, help us get these things out. Remember that if you are in the motorized Class A gas market, that TNS is happy to try to help you with anything and everything related to Georgetown and FR3. And if we don't know, we're going to call our guy.
Yeah.
So we'll help you find it. So we just ask, like I said, just give us a shot, give us a call. If you've got suggestions for anything related to the podcast, we've got the podcast at tsrvs.com email address set up. We've been banking some of those questions and suggestions. Tex and I are planning to try to get back on here pretty quickly and begin to address some of those and some of the things that we're seeing in the markets just in general. But I think, boys, if you don't have anything else, I think I'll wrap us up here and go. Okay. So, dear Heavenly Father, as we close this up today, we thank you for the opportunity. We thank you for bringing Adam to us. We thank you for keeping him safe through all of the traveling and everything that he does. We ask that you would continue to bless not only him, our family, his work family. We would ask that you would continue to challenge us. We look forward to the challenges and really, really are thankful for the blessings and only ask that you would continue to guide us to handle those blessings in a way that would be pleasing in your eye. Lord, we ask all these things in Jesus' name and through Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
We'll see you soon, everybody.
Sounds good. Thank you.